Hello friends, welcome back to Data Center Guru Knowledge Platform, knowing A to Z of data center. Now I am back with very important session, top 10 design build considerations for RFP. Because what we found currently in this industry is one of the major contributor to a trouble project or budget overrun or time overrun in a project is inadequate RFP. So we are trying to cover it in terms of what are those current challenges which we are facing today, and what are the different kind of RFPs, and what are the difference between them. What are those top 10 considerations which I am going to talk about, which will minimize or mitigate the risk, what or challenges what we are talking about. And next, I am also talking about a comprehensive process from start to end of RFP. And also what are the different elements which is required to be taken care during this RFP process. So I'll be talking about it. And then what are the key benefits if you follow this, apart from overcoming the challenges which we are going to get out of it. So let's move next. As usual, I have created a definition of RFP. So RFP is nothing for request for proposal. So RFP is a business document that announces project, describes it, and solicit bids from qualified vendor or different vendors to complete it. So it is a kind of a bidder or a qualified contractor selection. So you define your project details, the requirements, other parameters which we'll be talking subsequently in this session, and invite the qualified contractor to compete and then select the right partner for it. So the proposal should not be so detailed. So what we're trying to say is, and what we have found it also, because there has been a lot of RFPs where you have given so much of detailing that it doesn't give flexibility to contractor nor to the customer also to readjust or get the best solution out of it. So during the subsequent slides you will have more understanding about why this is required, because what is happening, either we are giving much more detail where you are not able to get much of value from the contractors, or we are giving much lesser information where contractors are not able to design a solution or implement it successfully from that perspective. So how to balance it, what are the key information which is required, which we will be talking. So in this slide I am going to talk about how or why are we talking about this RFP process, and what are those current challenges and issues which persists with our current system. So first let me tell you the issues or impact of those problems is more than 70% of the project changes or the conflicts which is attributable to your inadequate RFP. So that means project conflicts happen, and then your project budget overrun happens, and also the time overrun. So these are the major contributor, one of the major contributor. Also what we have observed is more than 30% of the trouble projects are attributable to this inadequate RFP. So trouble projects are where all the parameters of your project goes for a toss. So you are neither able to meet timelines, your budget, quality, and that defines the trouble project criteria, and more than 30% is attributable to that. So why And these things are happening because what we see is not well defined eligibility criteria. So if you don't have well defined eligibility criteria, then what happens is horses and asses would be in the same race, and then you will not be able to distinguish between those. And during the entire process of bidder selection or evaluation process, this non-competent partners win the project and then you struggle. So it is very very necessary to have the right eligibility criteria to uh, get the right partner in the bidding race, so that there is a right level of competition and you select the right bidder. Similarly, not well defined evaluation metrics. What I have found in this industry is majorly, I would say more than 90% of the people follow L1 T1 mechanism. That means they have a T1, but for T1 there are not much defined criteria or the parameter which you can be able to measure. These are not measurable criteria. Then what happens is people on gut feeling or people on a face value, they decide what is T1, and then it goes to the another process of commercial negotiation, and whoever is the L1, that is commercially the lowest price, there you select them for the project. And sometimes what happens is edge, you are not able to define those evaluation criteria well, then you are not able to compare the different bids which has come from the different bidders, and you are not able to do a proper comparison, and so that even if there are difference between the solutions or the scope or thing, you are not able to distinguish and putting everything on at par, and that's how you face the challenge during the execution phase. Then so I talked about most of the industries following L1T1 mechanism. There is no problem in following L1T1, but problem is putting the right matrices, measurable matrices. The requirement and design considerations are not well defined. So most of the documents what we found is like a copy paste. One guy has prepared RFP and just kind of a copy paste goes along. So a lot of irrelevant information or even contradicting information which you find in the RFP, and is once you get your partner on board and the baseline is your contract itself, and if that is contradicting or conflicting, then obviously in the project you will find such problems. Second, design considerations. So you have to put the right design basis based on which the other guy will design the data center. If you don't provide all those inputs, then again there will be a lot of gray areas in terms of assumptions people will take, and that assumptions may not be the reality, or there can be expectation gap, and that creates a problem. Even if you put lot of riders, because what I found is people give any RFP and then they put a rider that bidder has to do so and so and so and so and so forth. So what happens is there are two ways. One way is bidder doesn't have understanding, so he put a contingency audit to meet it, or he oversize it, overscope it, and then get into it. So again, you are not able to get the right value, because even if you put a rider, there are conflicting information in your RFP, and they will come back to you and say, "Yeah, it's you yourself has said this, so I'm providing this." So you can't say that it is overriding and all. So these are the such problems which comes and which contributes or attributes to those problems. And if you summarize the overall challenges or the issues, and I bucket into two categories. The first category, what I found is clarity in the RFP. If you don't clarity, then conflicts has to come. So that is one problem which gives this. And second, selection of right partners. If you don't have the right set of evaluation process and evaluation criteria, eligibility criteria, then you will end up getting a wrong partner or incompetent partner for a specific project. And then obviously if somebody is not competent to deliver a project, you are going to struggle. So these are the two things which I found as a major contributor to the project failures or the project issues. Now coming back to types of RFP. So I was just trying to, if you see on the top part, this one. So I just wanted to give you clarity in terms of what is RFI, what is RFP, what is RFQ, so that you have more clarity about it. So normally RFI is a request for information. Sometimes what happens is you have got a very complex project or a new kind of innovative project which is starting, and you do not have so much of knowledge about it or clarity about it. Then what do you create? Float an RFP in the industry and invite the competent parties from the industry to come discuss with you. They understand and provide you a lot of inputs which is relevant to you. And based on the RFI, then the next step is create RFP or create RFQ. So when RFP and when RFQ, so before that so first, if somebody is going through, or a lot of places people doesn't go for RFI, they directly go for RFP or RFQ. So what is the application of RFP and RFQ is like there are 5 type of bids which I have observed in the industry. So the first is, we call it DBOT. So design, build, operate and transfer. So in this case, the bids are prepared in such a way that the bidder or the successful partner has to design the data center, they have to build it, they have to operate for a certain period, they have to own the entire assets and everything, and then after that particular operate period is over, they have to transfer it to the owner. So this is a kind of DBOT model. Second model, what we found is design, build, operate, which I have been seeing more relevant for the government and even for larger enterprises who are building the data center. So in this case, what they expect is bidder to design the data center, build the data center, operate for certain years, and then hand over back to customer. The difference between option 1, the 1 and option 2 is that all the assets and everything are owned by the bidder in the first case. Second case, all the assets are owned by the end customer itself, but the bidder is the operator. So he has to design, build, operate and then hand over those entire operations to the customer, or the operations get renewed. Third bit is more also relevant in the industry, even for the co-location players, enterprise and other sectors, is design build. So design build contract is a kind of, you float a tender where the bidder is responsible for design of data centers and also build of data center. After build is done, there is acceptance testing and then they hand over to the customer, their customer, to run the data center. And the fourth one is the build contract. So what happens is the bidder in this case is not responsible for design of the data center. So customer does all the designing, they prepare the design, bill of material and designs and everything on nuts and bolts level, and bidder has to quote based on what customer design and the detailed bill of material they have given, and they have to build the data center on a turnkey basis. So all the building blocks of the data center, whatever electrical, building, architecture, safety, security, automation, everything they are responsible for it. And then once they build it, goes through the acceptance criteria, then they hand over to the customer and their job is done. So this is on a turnkey basis. That's what I put in the bracket. The last one is the package wise, stage wise. So in this case, what happens, and a lot of even larger co-location players are following. So they float the RFP for different stages of the project to the different parties. So like they float a tender for design. So they will hire a design consultant for it. They float a tender for site selection. So there is a company, they will do the site selection. Then once the design is done, they will float the tender for build. So they are not going to build the data center or invite a turnkey kind of bidder, but they invite a package-wide kind of bidder. They will hire a civil contractor who will build the building. They will hire a DG vendor who can supply the DG, electrical vendor who can provide the electrical equipments. Similarly, it is a package-wise and stage-wise thing to do, and entire the management is done by the customer itself. So when we talk about RFP, so RFPs are more applicable till stage 4. Stage 5, when you break it up into package-wise, then more relevant document for that is RFQ, that is request for quotation. So you have already defined what, let us say what UPS you want, what is the specification, what is the capacity, and so on and so forth. So you float a quotation RFQ for UPS to the UPS vendors and you buy it. Similarly, you float RFQ for chillers, float RFQ for panels, float RFQ for so and so, different package, and you get them out of it. So this is what there are different type of RFPs and what are the difference between them. I hope you have understood out of it. Then moving to next is what are those top 10 considerations. When you talk about 10 considerations broadly, obviously you can have a standard template which is available, and every organization has got standard template, so there is no problem. You can use that standard template for it. Second point, you clearly specify objective requirements, site condition, design basis. These are very, very important information, and which I found a lot of lacking in this industry. So they specify project specific requirements up to some extent, but all the parameters they don't provide. Design basis they don't provide. Sometimes they design themselves, and sometimes not the complete information around design considerations on the basis. Site conditions is all about wherever you are going to build the data center. So you have to provide all the details around the site conditions. Or even bidders sometimes they visit the site for a better understanding. Then clearly specify the technological requirements. So obviously there are different kind of technology available for different kind of systems in the data center. So what kind of technology which you are looking at, that need to be very well clearly defined. Then clearly mentioned about standards and benchmarks. Obviously, like the data centers are of different types, different kinds like tier 1, 2, 3, 4. So what tier of data center you want to build? So you can put a benchmark. Are you going for a platinum green building, platinum rating kind of certification? So whatever you need as a part of the standard benchmark, which you need to provide it very clearly. So that covers also a lot of things which you may not have to get into the details. Like you provide, I need tier 3 data center. So tier 3 has specific requirements, and you don't have to then list out everything to take care of it, right? Then 5, they clearly mention about operational requirements, because operations, whenever you are building the data center, there are a lot of operational stuff or considerations which you have to do or consider during the design and the build itself. So those requirements you have to mention very clearly. Otherwise, when you reach at the time of operations, you may have challenges. Similarly, clearly define the measurable eligibility and evaluation criteria. So this is something I found a lot of dilution and there is no clarity. And this is one of the major issues which contributes to your troubled projects. Clearly define documenting reporting requirement of different stages of the project with Lasky metrics. So when you run a project, what at different stages of the project, what are the key deliverables? What are the different reporting mechanism, communication mechanism? Who are the different stakeholders responsible or accountable or consultative or information? So you prepare a complete Rasky matrix around that so that you know you are covering the entire life cycle of the project and at different stages of the project what are the deliverables or outcome you are expecting and whether you are getting it that way or not. So those are the checks and balances which happens if you put it. Point number 8, very important parameter, 5-level commissioning process. What I found in this industry is people are not following 5-level commissioning process. So what is this 5-level commissioning process? I explained in my previous session, so I will not get into the detail again. But broadly I am saying if 5-level commissioning process is a control point in the life cycle of the project. So that you have got a gate and each and every gate or the control point has got certain criteria to meet and you have got a controller who checks at each and every gate and ensures that all those criteria of the different gates are clear or done so that there is no spillover to the next gate and so on and so forth. If you don't do that, and this is what the industry I have been seeing today, you are doing directly acceptance testing, that is level 5 testing. So what happens, you do not take care of all the 4 stages before and you are identifying level 1 mistake in level 5. Obviously it will become a major challenge in plugging up those gaps. So that is the reason you must put 5-level commissioning process requirement as a part of the RFP. 9, specify details of the role, people requirements and the project organizations. So you must set very clearly what kind of people you need, what should be the project organizations and what are the role of the people, what set of competencies you are expecting from them very clearly. And then the final one is specify the final commercial terms and conditions of the project, which aligned with all those other 9 parameters and take care of that. Then moving to the next is, this slide is, it looks very busy, but I try to create a overall block which covers the entire tendering process and also covers what are the different elements, what considerations even I talked about in my previous slides. Those things are also considered in a very good way for a better clarity. So in this one slide, you may have a much better clarity in terms of the requirement of what is this tendering process or RFP process you should run, and each stage what are the activities you should do and what are the different elements we should look at during the entire tendering process. So let me start with assessment. So during the assessment is nothing but understanding the requirement from your customers. So what is your objectives and the project requirement, data center site design considerations. So where is the data center site? You have to take all those inputs. What are the different design considerations? You have to take it. Then you move to preparation. So preparation is the techno-commercial tender document which you prepare, where take the desired inputs from customer on the tender part of it. So assessment provides one of the input, and you also take certain inputs from the customer to prepare the techno-commercial document. Once I discuss, then I will get about the element of it. We can be able to correlate it later. Then review it. So whatever RFP document which you have prepared, you run through with your customer, and if there is any inputs, further inputs, you incorporate it, and then you hand over again to your customer, and now that RFP document is ready to be floated. So identify the expected bidder who would be part of this bid, and then you send those RFPs for their bid response. Then what happens is, before a bid evaluation happens, then there is also a pre-bid meeting. If there is any queries with the customer or your bidders, you clarify all those queries and record it. Then bidder has to respond back on the bid. You evaluate all those bids based on the evaluation criteria, based on the eligibility criteria, whether all the partners qualified, and then create a score combining technical and commercial for each and every bidders, and based on the scorecard you share the complete detailed scorecard to customer, and based on that customer can take a decision whether he set a overall benchmark, a score for technical, and then invite for a reverse auction, or they can combine both the score of technical and commercial, and whoever has scored the highest one, they can award the contract to them. So this is just a process, and the elements we are talking about is objectives and requirement, site conditions, benchmark, what kind of benchmark, or performance requirement, efficiency requirement, reliability requirement, sustainability requirement. You have to mention clearly what kind of technology which you are looking at, what are the measurable matrices for eligibility criteria for the people, which makes it competent partner or successful partner to deliver this project successfully. Very, very important. Again, measurable matrices for evaluation criteria, create RASCI matrix, terms and conditions. Then from sustainability perspective, define the scope, define schedule, define cost, define project organization, define the project management processes, how you are going to drive the project, then define 5-level commissioning process, and final, what is the project acceptance criteria. If you are able to incorporate all these elements and follow this 6-step process in the RFP process, you are able to almost eliminate the challenges and the issues what you are facing today. Benefit: you are reducing your risk drastically, project risk. So 70% conflict, 30% trouble project eliminated. You are setting the accountability of the bidder. So there is no dilution. So everything they will come back to you, sir, change order. No, there is no change order required because accountability is set on the RFP. The right partner comes on board. It's not like you will end up getting a wrong partner or incompetent partner on board, and then you struggle during the entire project cycle. So selection of competent partner which comes in the race, and obviously your project gets completed within all those budget, time, scope and quality, and enable you to achieve 100% of your project objective. So these are the key things which I thought to be shared, and this is a very, very critical parameter. That is the reason why I included as a part of this session, so that the people from the data center industry or even outside, they can use this as the best practices and minimize the issues or eliminate the issues and the risks which is actually thrown out because of the RAP or attending classes. So with that, I come to end of the today's session, and my upcoming session I would be talking about data center operational sustainability. So now I have completed data center assessment phase, design phase, build phase. Now I am moving to operate phase. So before we move into that, like in your data center, you have got multiple building blocks and it acts as a puzzle to build, design and build. Similarly, it acts as a puzzle to operate, because irrespective of what is the level of redundancy or the reliability of your data center which is built, if your operations and management program is not matured, then you may still have challenges in sustaining the same level of reliability across the lifespan of data center. Obviously, I will talk more in detail in my upcoming session. In nutshell, what I'm trying to say is the why I put the session name is operational sustainability, because how do you sustain the same level of reliability and performance across the lifespan of the data center? How do you enhance the life of your assets or the data center? How do you drive more and more efficiency? How do you operational efficiency, energy efficiency in the data center? So these are all more associated with operation and management of data center, which I will be talking in my upcoming session on 5th July. So wait for this. And so finally, I would like to thank you again for watching this session, and I hope this particular session has been more fruitful and effective. I always look forward for your feedback, your inputs on the improvements, or you can provide compliments if you are liking it, loving it. Please share this as much as possible to the other people so that they also get benefited out of it. So lastly, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.